Welcome in, everybody. We keep hitting this topic. We've got a lot of content out already for you. And Simon has returned for one other part of this topic, and we'll do more in January, but we really wanted to hit this hard right now because just after Thanksgiving, for me, that's usually the time where some of these teams are already having to turn the page mentally, if not physically, on the field. So we did hot seat or not. You can see the board here. The board's done. We're not going to work too much off of moving any more of these guys around. But we did 20 of these guys. We got them here on the right side of the screen in the green zone, largely safe. We got some guys in the middle that we feel are probably safe. They're really not in the hot seat, we don't think. And then we got five guys all the way to the left that we think, as a trio, me and Simon and Shane Ratliff, as a trio, we think those five guys are gone, even though there was a little bit of discussion about three of them. More than likely, those five guys are out. So that brings us then to filling in some vacancies. And we're going to go much more in depth on this in January. But tonight, Simon especially has done the lion's share of this foundation work for us and is going to trot out a lot of stuff. I've got a little bit to bring to the table tonight. I'm saving most of it for January. But we did want to get some takes out there early before everybody else runs around and steals them and try to establish some things that we're interested in or that we're really willing to go after hard or that we're willing to fight for. And Simon's done a tremendous job of bringing all that here to the table tonight. Before we get into that, though, this is Pro Football Enterprises. You know that because you come here a lot, so we appreciate that. Me and Simon are also at the core of everything that goes on Box Score Network as well. You see that in the lower left channel. So, Simon, it's good to see you again tonight. As always, talk to us a little bit about Box Score, and then we'll jump into these coaches and staffs and things.
Man, thank you so much for having me. I don't think we actually touched on this, but I don't know. Is this the first series of videos or any episodes of Pro Football Enterprises I've truly been on since the whole
Rebrand,
branding
yeah,
change, all that? It might, I feel like it is because I feel we've
it's
done some
close. Yeah,
simulcast stuff that went on here and on Box Score, but I think this is my first
right.
exclusive guest spot on Pro Football Enterprise. So thank you so much for having me. Thank you all so much for listening and watching. We appreciate it. Box Score Network, a collection of the sickiest of sports sickos you can find. You can check out all of our individual podcasts. We have college football, baseball, NFL. One of our pods, two peas on a pod, they're going to hit on some NBA topics from time to time as well. My show is the Simon and Friends podcast, NFL every single week. Ben is on there very frequently, about to be an uptick in those appearances as well. But Box Score as a collective, go over to the Box Score Network YouTube channel because it is draft central. So if you're a fan of one of these teams who were your coach has already been fired, we're talking about firing your coach, you're hoping your coach gets fired because it's a bad season, you're already thinking about the draft, head over to the Box Score Network YouTube channel. The Pro Football Enterprises team, their draft conversations, their player profiles are going up on that channel as well. Not all of them. There are exclusive ones to this channel, so stick here and watch those. But you'll get some of those conversations over there. You also get some film rooms from me. You'll get discussions from me and Ben from my podcast where we talk draft stuff as well. So Draft Central 24/7 on Box Score Network YouTube channel.
And it's loaded. It's a lot. It's not a little. It's going to continue to grow all the way up until right up until draft time, and it's a lot. I'll say this on my side because I already said it the other night. I'll say it again. The draft, when it comes to those individual draft profiles that we're doing, we do not yet have the staff to cover all 300 players ish that are going to be getting drafted, right? We just don't have that. So we're not trying to cover everybody individually. What we will do eventually, as we hit position groups with Simon, or as we hit mock drafts with everybody on the network, we will hit eventually just about everybody. But as far as those individual profiles go, we're going to run through probably a good strong 40 to 50 guys between the two networks that you can count on that we have put the work into. Like we are not playing around on that. We've put in a ton of film work, thought, study time, and you'll end up getting opinions from about four different of us guys, me, Simon, Shane, Austin, on those individual players, and they won't be randos. They'll be guys somewhere in the top 2 to 3 rounds that you'll care about and your teams will care about. And we've tried to really put in not obnoxious hot takes, but we've really tried to put in the work to give you, the audience, a feel for what those guys can do, the range that we would start to be interested in those guys at, and that sort of thing. And a lot of you guys are doing the same work, so you come over here and get an opinion here as well, and you add to it to what you're already studying. So that's the Box Score Network. This is Pro Football Enterprises tonight. Simon, let's get right into it, man. Why don't we? I'll let you make your choice. You can either pick a job and try to fill it tonight, or you can just put together a coaching staff and then say, hey, you know, teams, there are multiple teams that could fit this coaching staff. I'll let you pick your direction and we'll work from there, man.
Yeah, so what I think I want to do for tonight, I don't have any I have five or so mock staffs that I put together, just head coach, OC, DC. I wasn't sure how many groups we were going to end up firing in the previous segments. I wasn't sure exactly how you want if you just wanted to come up with the best three or like try to fill spots. So I don't have anybody tied to a specific job. I'm sure we can maybe talk it out. Maybe as I describe the job and the coaching candidates I'm talking about to you, you can tell me where we should fit them. I think that might be a good way to do this. And then I have a couple GMs as well that I'd be interested in placing some places. And if there's anything left over that you think needs filling, let me know because I have a long list of also Rands
Okay.
that I considered.
I like that.
We in these other videos we have five jobs that we think are going to essentially be open: Dolphins, Falcons, Cardinals, Giants, and Titans. Here's my number one staff head coach candidate that I'm looking at right now. It's Declan Doyle, the Bears offensive coordinator. Now this might be way too soon for Doyle. He's only 29. He's only 29 years old. His amount of time in his life that he can rent a car is a preschooler. But I don't care. Doyle spent 6 seasons with Sean Payton between New Orleans and Denver before joining Ben Johnson's staff in Chicago to be the OC. I just want to tap that tree as quickly as possible before he becomes Ben Johnson and eight teams are seeking him every year and he's waiting as long as he wants because he knows he's going to be sought after every year. Let me get this guy when he's before he turns 30 years old and before he thinks he can get any job he wants because he probably will be able to do that. But he followed a lot of the Ben Johnson school of becoming an offensive coordinator. He's very analytically driven. He's very like diligent, like very math based kind of guy. Tight ends coach though in Denver before he came over to the Bears, which it makes you highly involved in the pass game and the run game. You're understanding how the offense totally works together. So I'm tagging Declan Doyle as a very early, hey, go get this guy. And yeah, he's 29, but the coaches are just going to keep getting younger.
Right.
They're just going to keep getting younger. So do you want to get the seventh 30-year-old to become a head coach? Or do you want to get the one that sets the bar and is the first one, right? Mike Tomlin was the first 37-year-old head coach hired. Sean McVay was the first, what was he, 34, 35-year-old head coach hired. I'm not saying Doyle's going to be one of those guys and win a Super Bowl, but I am saying it's going to happen eventually. You might as well go get him. Don't be scared off by the age. In terms of filling out the staff, I have plenty of options on that front. Bears quarterback coach JT Barrett has gotten OC looks in the past. Bears wide receiver coach Antoine Randall hasn't gotten OC looks necessarily, but he's currently the assistant head coach of the Bears as well. So he's getting some of those higher duties. He spent time in Detroit with Ben Johnson. And then, stop me if you heard this name, Ben. Running back coach Eric Bieniemy is
Ooh.
there in Chicago right now.
Hmm.
So if I'm Declan Doyle and I'm 29 years old and I'm getting head coach job, it wouldn't be bad to bring over Eric Bieniemy, who's won Super Bowls, been an OC, been in the NFL for a really long time. So I've got three candidates right there on my staff that I work with in Chicago that I would probably tap to bring over to be the OC. I'm leaning towards Randall because he's a guy that as a assistant head coach, he has some of those duties right now that would help me, right? If I'm a 29-year-old head coach and I'm looking to rebuild an offense, let me bring a guy that's helping Ben Johnson right now with some of the assistant head coach duties. That way he can help me with that as well. And for him, he's getting a chance to call plays, something he's not going to do. Well, actually, Doyle will probably call plays initially, but Randall, I can pass that on to him eventually. On the defensive side, I'm going over to Denver. I'm taking my time in Denver with Sean Payton to tap from that defensive tree. Look at what that defense has been the last couple of years. I'm going over there to do that. There's a guy by the name of Jim Leonard who I would kind of look to first. He's the assistant head coach there. So again, that assistant head coaching duties, he's probably got some of those responsibilities that would be helpful to me on a weekly planning basis. He's also the defensive pass game coordinator. So he's not just in charge of one position group, but he's in charge of helping Vance Joseph game plan. Hey, how are we going to defend the pass week in and week out? Defend the pass is pretty important in today's NFL. Leonard also has experience as a defensive coordinator at Wisconsin. Now, you can tell me what you thought about Wisconsin's defense from like 2016, I think, to like 2021, because that's or 2022. That's when he was the defensive coordinator. Um, but Wisconsin, like known for good defensive play, has produced a lot of NFL defensive players, and so he's called defenses before. He's put together defensive game plans, called defenses on game days. Um, so that's a trio that I'm looking at. Can you tell that maybe I thought of this group when I was starting to consider if the Steelers should move on from Mike Tomlin, considering I've got a young, super smart OC. I've got a former Steeler as my offensive coordinator, and then I've got a Wisconsin guy as my defensive coordinator, who, by the way, coached Keanu Benton when he was there. So this was definitely in mind for the Steelers when I was having a moment of crisis at one point over Thanksgiving. But I think this would be a great staff for anybody to get started with. What do you think about this group?
Okay, first of all, I love it. I'm looking up one quick thing that I couldn't quite remember. Give me 1 second here. Yeah, okay. So, um, that's good again. By the way, let me make this all about myself for 1 second. I'm sorry about the cough. It happens. It seems to happen only when I want to talk, not when Simon's talking. And the glove, some of you have noticed on my left hand by now. Um, I have a nerve messed up in my left hand. I need to keep the hand warm. So, the cold really ups the problem. So that's why that. All right, enough of me. So I really like this. I actually really do. And the age thing is a consideration, right? The 29-year-old head coach thing, but it's not going to scare me off. If I like what I see here and you do and I do, then I like that with Declan Doyle. So I'll tell you what not instantly. The more you talked, I thought of Tennessee Titans for this. Is where I like the fit here. You've got a quarterback in place there in Cam Ward who obviously needs some help. And some of that's part of that's weapons, but I think a lot of that's going to be direction too. Would probably be, I would rather have the direction. The more and more I found myself grabbing some defensive guys for Tennessee. Not that they need it most, but that just where the draft was lined this year in my mocks. You get over here to Tennessee on the offensive side, I really think because they do need offensive help, but I really think they need a guy, a coach, an OC who's got a really good direction that can work with Cam, and that's what I instantly thought of. I'm not saying he couldn't work anywhere else, but out of the jobs that might be open here that we're looking at, Tennessee is immediately where I wanted to put him. The Antoine Randall L thing, I'll tell you what really got me is when you said Declan Doyle would call plays. All right. I hate, and we're having a little bit of this problem over in Washington right now with Dan Quinn, but I hate when I know that somebody's one of the top coordinators in the league and he gets hired as head coach and he's not calling the plays anymore.
Hmm.
You handed that off to somebody else. Well, maybe they're good at, maybe they're not, but we know you are, and listen, I get it. It's real hard to be a head coach in this league and handle some of the coordinator duties as well, including play calling. But if you don't do it, you may be handing what you may be doing is handing the play calling duties away from you, the 15th, one of the top 15 play callers in the league, to a guy who may be the 50th or the 100th best play caller in the league. And that may be the difference in you getting fired or not. So you're just going to have to suck it up, Buttercup. You're going to have to hand off a little bit of the head coaching duties and a little bit of the defensive coordinator duties or the OC duties and, work both. Not everybody. Some people can get the right coordinators in and be the head coach, the overseer, right? Totally fine with that. I want Declan Doyle calling plays. I really do. So when you said that, I was instantly in on it. Antoine Randall L as a guy he's worked with as OC, maybe eventually 2, 3, 4 years from now, if they are comfortable enough with it as a staff, they can start to hand that off to Randall L. Totally fine. And then Jim Leonard is the DC. What I was looking up, I was trying to remember, I was like, man, dang it, I know that name. Matter of fact, where I knew that name from was a lot of Wisconsin fans. A lot of them wanted
Hmm.
Jim to be the head coach in Wisconsin because they liked
Okay.
him that good.
Yep.
So whenever the
Cool.
previous head coach was retiring, Leonard was the guy. A lot of them were like, man, that's the guy. So Leonard not only has the defensive cojones, he's got the NFL experience now, but he had people in a legit place wanting him to do the head coaching thing. So I like that as defensive coordinator too. I like this staff. It's a little unproven for sure. Not a little, a lot unproven. But I'm not sure that in Tennessee you're going to get all the biggest names anyway. You know, not that there are a lot of big names this particular coaching carousel, but the ones that are big, I'm not totally sure that Tennessee is going to be their first choice necessarily. So I like this. I really do for Tennessee.
For Tennessee, it would be the opportunity to work with Cam Ward. And a lot of Ben Johnson waiting was like how much that was him waiting for the right quarterback, the quarterback that he
Yes.
wanted to work
Right.
with.
Right.
Doyle could be that. To your point about Randall L, absolutely. But I do think if you're going to Tennessee and if Ben Johnson or if through Ben Johnson, Declan Doyle loves what JT Barrett is doing with quarterbacks, then maybe you bring in the quarterback coach to be your OC to work with Cam Ward specifically, since that quarterback's
Right.
already in
Right.
place. That's a
Right.
possibility.
Yeah.
And another thing about if this was going to the Titans, maybe you skip Jim Leonard and you let Denard Wilson stay because he's done good things with that Tennessee
Right.
defense. Now, you doing this has helped me make my life a little easier because I'm going to keep Leonard with Doyle, and
Okay.
I can keep I have a place I can put Wilson now.
Okay.
So let's say Doyle, Randall L, and Jim Leonard. If you want JT Barrett to work with Cam Ward, that's fine. I'm sure Doyle can get somebody to work with him. But if that's our crew going to Tennessee, and then with the Bears, the I assume they would just elevate either Eric Bieniemy or JT Barrett to be their OC at that point with Doyle on his
I
way
would
out.
think so.
But
Yeah.
obviously Ben Johnson will still be calling plays. And for Ben Johnson, for Declan Doyle, like you said, I would envision, especially with a young quarterback, if you're the OC coming in to be the head coach, you should be the play caller for like 3 years, I would say 2, 3 years. And then as
Yes.
soon as that quarterback is in a rhythm where he's like calling a lot of the stuff on his own, that offense is established and it's working. There's an
Yes.
infrastructure, but also maybe it's starting to get a little stale and you need some new ideas. Then you
Yes.
hand that off to the next guy who is in the system. So he's not going to do anything completely new, but he's going to add some wrinkles to it. I would envision that that's the best way to kind of make that happen, assuming that guy doesn't get hired away before you have the opportunity to hand it off, which is, the plague that keeps happening to
Yes.
Sean McVay. But, it is what it is. It's working out for him. Okay. All right.
I tell you
Here, go
real
ahead.
quick why I like that. And part of why I like that and why I don't like it in other places. You're right about Cam Ward being the appeal for a coach wanting to go to Tennessee because they've seen Cam and they like that. And part of the unappeal of the Tennessee job is the ownership. They're the ones that let go of Vrabel, you know, and they're the ones who let go of Callahan real fast. Not that I had a problem with letting go of Callahan, but if you're an established coach or a guy with a pretty good name about you, you're not exactly looking over at the Tennessee ownership group and feeling real good about their stable decision making. It's not been great. So, even back before Vrabel got hacked, you had a lot of power play stuff going on there as well, which lends itself even further to the idea that this franchise hasn't been the most stable environment, even when Mike Vrabel was in the building. He pulled a power play himself, and then he got power played. So that does take away from the appeal. I really wouldn't want to put this staff in Miami because they've already got the young hot shot
Hmm.
offensive coordinator in mind. I don't know that that changes a whole lot. Atlanta, it doesn't feel great in Atlanta necessarily. Arizona, New York. I wouldn't mind trying those places, but it's just I'm hoping you'll trot out some other staffs and some other names for those other places. So best fit Tennessee, not the only fit, but best fit Tennessee.
All right. Here's my next group. Here's my number two group. And this is a defensive minded head coach hire. And
All
it's
right.
coming from the Rams.
Okay.
We're stealing from the Rams coaching tree. And it's Chris Shula.
Hmm.
Shula might be the next in line of young defensive coordinators to become a really good head coach. He's been with the Rams since 2017, which is when Sean McVay first joined the team. So there's a lot of time seeing McVay learn to become and excel at being a really good head coach. Also, you'll like this. For the first 3 years that Shula was there, he was a defensive positional coach under the great Wade Phillips, who was the Rams defensive coordinator for those 3 years that
Okay.
McVay was first there.
Yes.
Um, so Shula has experience learning and coaching and being in meetings and being in film rooms and learning how to motivate players and evaluate players under Wade Phillips and Sean McVay. I love that. He's also coaching one of the best defenses in the NFL right now. He was the coordinator last year when they punched way above their weight in terms of the talent that they had, the youth that they had, and now it's all
Yeah.
gelling together into this like top five
Yes.
defense that he's in charge of. So I really like Chris Shula. What I like for him as offensive coordinator, this will take you back, Ben. This is how long we've been podcasting together. Rams current offensive coordinator Mike LaFleur. Matt LaFleur's younger
Wow.
brother. He was the OC of the Jets. I liked him when he was with the Jets those first couple of years that he was with Robert Saleh. He gets canned from there. He ends up on the Rams staff eventually as an assistant and then eventually as the offensive coordinator. This would be a chance, even as a lateral move to OC, for him to call plays and make his mark and get another shot at it. But for a guy like Chris Shula, who young guy, first time head coach, his OC has been an OC before, right? So he's not going to be surprised by the demands of the job. Um, and then I moved some stuff around to one other consideration I had for OC for Chris Shula though was Alex Van Pelt, who was Kevin Stefanski's longtime OC in Cleveland. He went to New England under Gerard Mayo to call plays for the first time. Had an okay year despite everything that was going on over there. He gets fired. He's with the Rams right now as an assistant. So that was a more veteran type guy that I kind of considered. But LaFleur was who I ultimately chose to go with. Um, and then, Van Pelt could become, well, I'll get back to that part in a minute. Uh, Shula has some interesting choices at DC. Um, in my presented scenario originally, I was thinking Raheem Morris because he is going to be fired. So more on that. That actually
Yeah.
might be where I go.
Yeah.
Because of their time together with the Rams. Yeah, let's actually do that. That makes more sense.
Okay.
Raheem Morris is my DC here. So veteran guy who's been around a long time as well, with kind of two young pups as the head coach and OC. But Morris and Shula worked together with the Rams for a few years there. Um, so, because even if Shula wanted to run the defense himself, Morris would be a great like assistant head coach candidate to come in, help run things all around, provide experience for Shula, and just like fill in gaps everywhere. I wouldn't expect anyone from the Rams to come with Shula to be the DC. Jimmy Lake was the positional coach tabbed by Morris in 2024 when he took the Falcons job, and he fired Lake after one season, and Lake just went back to the Rams as an assistant. Like nobody pegged him to be a DC again or a positional coach. He kind
Okay.
of just went back to the Rams, and the staff is mostly the same. Shula was obviously like the next guy up, but he stayed with the Rams to be DC. So there's not a positional coach I really considered. Um, so I wasn't sure if we were going to be firing Raheem Morris. So that was where my question was. But in this scenario, as people can see from the board, Morris is canned. So I'm putting Raheem Morris with Chris
Yeah.
Shula and Mike LaFleur. Ben, where do you want to put them?
Okay, well, I didn't instantly. This
Atlanta.
wasn't as this wasn't
Atlanta.
as right with Raheem Morris. This this didn't come to me as quickly as the Titans thing, but the more you talked, the more I thought through it. As you talked, the Dolphins is what stands out to me here. I have no problem with, you don't always need to change culture when you've only had this particular culture for a year or two. So I have no problem with the Cardinals or the Falcons bringing in another defensive guy, even after letting a defensive guy go. That's not a problem. Okay. The other guys haven't been there long enough to have established a culture that needs to be changed or needs to flop over to some new offensive mind. Okay. That's just not a big deal. But the Miami culture, I would love bringing in a Chris Shula defensive mindset there. Mike LaFleur, you mentioned as the OC. I would like that. And then Raheem Morris as the defensive coordinator. A lot of stability there and a really great defensive mind. They could use it there in Miami. I do feel like they need a little bit of a culture, shock there if Mike McDaniel goes. So I like the Dolphins fit there. Um, The Unfortunately, the Alex Van Pelt bit wouldn't be for me. I know there are people that like him and his work. I just didn't land there. I wasn't a fan of his work. Largely, I'm not saying it was awful, but I just wasn't a fan of what I was seeing when he was doing the play calling at the places. I'm old enough. I'm old as dirt, man. Okay. I watched his dad coach. I watched his grandfather coach for years with the Dolphins. Okay. So that's not why I put him there. In fact,
Oh,
it would be a little bit of a consideration to not put him there.
right. Yeah, a lot of pressure.
But, Don Shula really didn't have a great tenure in Miami.
Hmm.
His by far best work was back with the Colts, by far and away. Up until you get to the mid 70s with the Dolphins, where he had that undefeated year and the Super Bowl win, which is one of the best all time seasons. But man, by the time you're into the 80s, you've got that one Super Bowl appearance
Yeah.
with Marino, and that's it.
Yep. Hmm.
You have all the 80s and a healthy chunk of the 90s where you kind of forget all about that magical 70s run. And they were some tough, hardcore SOBs back in the 70s. They were just as good as the other AFC teams floating around. But by the time you get to the 80s and the 90s, you'd kind of forgotten that if you weren't a Dolphins fan. So you had a really long run there. I don't know that there's enough people in Miami who would associate Shula's greatness enough to bother Chris if he were there in Miami, is really what I'm driving at. I really kind of hate to put a guy that young in New York with the Giants.
Hmm.
That's a lot. That's a lot, man, to be young and to also be trying to do that in New York. I'm not saying it can't be done. It's a lot. So, for all you Don Shula fans out there, I realize that's one of the greatest all-time head coaches ever. Okay, I think he's top 10, and I wouldn't hesitate to put him higher. But man, I don't know how much of a hand Shula had in helping, the last 15 years personnel decisions in Miami. It wasn't going well. You had one of the all-time best quarterbacks ever in Marino. Didn't scratch a lot out. But back to Chris, I like the staff here. That's a really good deep dive there on that, man. I like this.
All right, let's get to a group that I think can withstand New York. Oh wait, no, that won't work. Never mind. All right, well, it's not gonna this group won't
Uh-oh.
go to New York.
No.
But this staff you're gonna like anyways.
I may stick him in New York. I'm starting to run out of places here.
You won't be able to. You won't be able
Okay.
to. Wait till I have what I
Okay.
have in store for you.
All right.
Because this is a head coach you've tried to put in New York before, and it's
Ah,
Brian Flores. I'm giving Brian Flores a job.
that's it. That's my man.
Um, I don't think I have to say, a whole heck of a lot. Brian Flores, we know who he is at this point, and I think the thing that makes me think now's the right time for him is what Seattle's defense and what Houston's defense are doing to people, and what Flores' Minnesota defense did last year when the offense wasn't like historically bad and was, their defense still pretty good now, but the bones of what he can do defensively, if you give him the right roster. And man, it would have been fun in New York, but you'll see why he can't do it in a second. Um, he can put that kind of defense together for sure. True game changing, like this defense defines X season any given year. Brian Flores is I'm giving him his next shot. But here's his staff, and here's why he can't go to New York because his
Uh,
offensive coordinator is Brian Dable. um, Flores was with the Patriots from 2004 to 2018. Dable was with the Patriots from 2000 to 2006, and then again from 2013 to 2017. Famously or infamously, the whole thing that sparked Flores's lawsuit against the NFL was when Bill Belichick texted him and said, "Congrats on the Giants job"
mm, yep.
to Brian Flores, and he went, "Oops, that was for the other Brian," because it was Brian Daboll. Um, which again, even for that reason, is probably why Flores went and go with the Giants anyways. But if he, water under the bridge, whatever.
Right.
uh, they can't get past that one, right? They can't get past the Daboll one. So
No.
so I'm Daboll, man. I don't know if he can really ever get a head coaching job again because of the way he just behaved on the sidelines. I don't think anybody can look at that and say until he's like in his 50s and he's just like way calmer. Like if he
Right.
does the Don Nelson thing and just as he gets older, like the hair just kind of grows out and he's taking some time for himself when he's away kind of thing. Um he's too intense. You just can't do it. You can't be that emotional to be a head coach. But as an OC man, let me see it again. Let me see it again. So Flores with Dayball, get the Bryans together, and then this is where I'll put Denard Wilson. Flores is gonna,
Mm,
Wilson is a good DC,
yeah.
but he's not established enough that he's going to need to overstep a Flores. And he's already gotten his time being a play caller that he's proven he can do it. So some of these other guys that I'm going to mention are going to be like lateral DC moves where they're going to want to be able to call plays, and Flores, like we've already talked about, isn't going to do that right away. But Denard Wilson, I think, can wait for a little bit. Um, so Flores with Dayball and Wilson, where do you want to stick those guys?
I'm going to be funny for a minute first, okay? Because I can't resist, but I'll
You're
move
going to
on
stick them back
quick,
in New York.
okay? I'm going to stick him in New York, okay? Can you imagine? Brian Flores is not a calm dude, all right? You talk about an in your face, get all up in your business real quick kind of a guy. And then you pair him with Brian freaking Dayball, who you already said can't get an HC for a while because he needs to calm the heck down. And now I want to put him with Jackson Dart, who's a psycho, and with Cam Scatabo, who's over here doing WWE crap. Listen, I mean, in New York City of all things, I love it. It doesn't get any more intense than that. So, I mean, I am all in on that. Okay, I'm done being funny. You're right. They can't go to New York here. Okay. Not with Brian Dable in tow. Okay. Uh, I I want him in Atlanta. Now, this is my favorite coaching staff so far. To me, Brian Flores all by himself. I'll try to be respectful here. Brian Flores all by himself to me is the single biggest, most attractive, most proven head coaching candidate that I want to get a job, any job this year, and it's not even close for me personally. You know how much I love Brian Flores, and I
Mm-hmm.
even told the Dolphins they should not have let him go. They should have let the
Mm-hmm.
general manager go, 2 or 3 years ago. And Brian needs to learn to get along with people a little bit better. Chris Greer was a master at front office politics, and Brian doesn't give a crap. He doesn't even go try. Well, he probably needs to try a little bit. This is my favorite coaching staff. You mix in Brian Dable's the OC, who I really like his OC work, and you mentioned Wilson there as the DC. So this, to me, this is a great place. I would like this staff in Tennessee. I would like this staff in Miami. Obviously, they can't go back to Miami. Be like Napoleon coming back.
There's a lot of awkward scenarios in
There's a lot
in the
of
corner we've painted ourselves into.
yes, there is. Can't go to New York. I don't want to stick them in Arizona, but this without the awkward ties, this is the best staff. It works anywhere, except it doesn't because of the awkward ties. So give me Atlanta. Let them come stomping into Atlanta, kick these people's butts in gear. There's enough talent there to work with. It's not a killer division. Yes, let's go in and beat the Saints by 20 points twice a year. Yes.
Just for you Vikings fans that are sad to see Brian Flores go, I'm
Mm.
tabbing Aiden Durd from Seattle. He's their defensive
Wow.
coordinator, to come and
Wow.
take that spot. Before he was there, I think he spent a lot of time. I'm getting some of these guys a little bit confused. In college, let me see. I had him right here. Aiden Durd,
Hey,
where you
that's okay.
been?
While you're looking it up, I was having trouble with some of the Ohio State linebackers a couple of weeks ago without actually reading my notes again. I was like, man, no, he played more edge than I thought, or hey, that guy was in space more than I thought. But we got it all
Oh,
straightened out.
you know what? He's a Dan Quinn guy. That's what I was thinking about Durd because he was
Yes.
in
Okay.
Dallas and Atlanta with Dan Quinn. So I figured get him in that Vikings mold. I think that might be a pretty good fit. So I've got Dirt going there to Minnesota to take Flores' spot. All right, this next group. Do you want an offensive minded or defensive minded? Let me ask based on I have one offensive guy and one defensive guy.
Yeah, we did two defensive. Well, let's see. Yeah, we did two defensive guys in a row. So let's switch over to the offense.
All right, I've talked about this guy for a couple of years now. It's Joe Brady. Joe Brady from
Yes.
Buffalo. I also
Yes.
didn't know what was going to happen with Brady because again, we talked about McDermott and some situations where he could get canned, but
Yep.
if he stays on in Buffalo, I'm taking Joe Brady out and I'm sticking him somewhere. So I don't have quite as firm a grasp on who Brady would want to work with because he's still relatively young in terms of his time in the NFL. So I have some options here. But Joe Brady essentially comes from LSU, obviously with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, just goes to Carolina. Matt Rule's the head coach. It's clearly dysfunctional, but Brady's putting together some nice offensives there, right?
Right.
A couple nice stints, a nice season here, a nice season there. Then he goes and he gets fired from that by Rule as a scapegoat. Everyone knew his scapegoat job right away. He ends up in Buffalo. He's an assistant for a while. One of them on Steelers so freaking bad, Ben. But he ends up becoming their OC when Ken Dorsey gets canned. So obviously Brady sees the issues with Ken Dorsey. Hey, let's spread them out. Let's go five receivers. Let's air this thing out. That's not working. Let's go six offensive linemen. Let's go fullback. Let's go two tight ends. And let's run the ball down their throat.
Yes.
So that's Brady. That's what he's about. But we know he can put these passing offenses together as well. Spent time under McDermott, who's a good head coach. He spent time around other good coaches in that group. So I'm getting Joe Brady a job this year. I have two OCs that we can talk about. Mike Kafka, who is on this board, right? We talked about in a previous segment. This he's trying to get another job as a true play calling OC. Now, this might not be a great fit then, right? Because we want Joe Brady to call the plays. So I'm going
Right.
to bring up a name and I'm going to see if you remember him, Ben, because I've talked about him 2 years in a row. Chris O'Hara,
Yes. Shoot.
offensive assistant, offensive analyst with the Minnesota Vikings. He's just the next young wonderkin situation kind of person. Spent
Yep.
time with the Rams, followed KOC to Minnesota. Um, he's getting what market corrected by Declan Doyle, unfortunately. But Chris O'Hara is a young guy who has been around good coaches, been around good play callers. I could see him coming here being an OC under Brady, being, it'd be a young group between those guys. Those guys are both younger than 40. Neither have been in the roles that we're talking about for them. Um, but it would be pretty fun, I think. And then from a defensive coordinator situation, let me get a little bit of experience here. I'm going with a guy like Matt Burke, who's the current defensive coordinator in Houston with D'Amico Ryan. So again, I'm plucking from one of the very important defenses in the NFL right now. But Burke has been in the NFL a long time, and he has been he's been a defensive coordinator in a lot of places. He's been an analyst in places. He's just in the game all the time. There's no gaps in his resume. There's no I'm gonna go down to college and try this. Is I'm in the NFL. Okay, who needs some help? Where can I go? Where can I go? Another guy I considered is a guy that we like and also has DC experience. So maybe you like this fit a little bit better. Ryan Nielsen, former defensive coordinator with the Saints and with the Falcons and with the Jaguars. Actually, no, he never became DC with the Saints. Longtime assistant with the Saints under Dennis Allen. Um, and it's funny because I there's a little bit of New Orleans connection with Joe Brady and LSU, but he was with the Saints as well. I wonder if they were with the Saints at the same time. I should have done that research. I don't think so. Um, but Nielsen is currently an assistant, just a defensive assistant with the Bills. So maybe we like that a little bit better because he also has DC experience, but he's a little bit younger and he has that connection with Brady right away. Burke was just kind of a shot in the dark, get a guy from the Texans staff. So I don't know if you lean one way or another with any of those groups because I talked about Kafka and O'Hara, but Kafka again would probably want a play calling job. And then you got Burke who probably wants to call plays, get out from under D'Amico Ryan's shadow a little bit. But if he's more comfortable being that DC that's not calling the plays, then maybe a guy like Ryan Nielsen wants a job again. What do you think about that group? Where do you want to send them?
I really like this group too. I like these groups better than I thought it would. I figured, I'd like two or three of your groups, and then maybe four and five I'd be kind of split on. So far, I like every group. So I really like this group too. Arizona Cardinals is where I want to put them. and I'm not trying to just fill in a spot, but out of all the places here available, let's say they're all five available, Arizona is the one I want to put on. I'll get to why in a second. Now, I am tempted to just let Zach Taylor go in Cincinnati and reunite him with Joe Burrow in Cincinnati,
Right. Yeah.
not to try to slam Taylor, and not just because it's a reunification with Joe Burrow, which it is, and that appeals to me, but I like this direction on the offense. Cincinnati could really use a good infusion of that direction. Good, tough run game with maybe the best passing game in the league between Burrow and his two receivers. I really like that, but I'm not optioning that. We're going to the Arizona Cardinals here. And I actually like Drew Petzing right now as Cardinals OC. Unfortunately, there hasn't been enough development of the offensive players. That's anybody from Kyler Murray to Marvin Harrison, other than McBride. Just haven't seen enough development here. And I'm ready to let the staff go in Arizona. So I like Joe Brady. I like the fact Arizona really hasn't had as much direction or identity as I would have liked over the past few seasons. And I think Brady would give that to them immediately. So I like that. I like him calling the plays. I like him hopefully developing people. I like the fact that we could probably let go of Kyler Murray and catch a quarterback in this year's draft. I'm not in love with any of these quarterbacks. I'm really not. But there's guys here that they could use. They'll probably have a pretty good draft pick to get one with. Maybe not the top guy they're interested in, but one of the guys. And then for the coordinators, I'd rather have Chris O'Hara as the OC, and I'd rather have Nielsen as the DC. You know,
And I'm glad you went that way
yeah,
because I just confirmed Nielsen and Joe Brady worked for the Saints at the same time from 2017 to 2018. So they're working
very
together
good,
now with the Bills. They worked together with the Saints a few years ago. So I like that grouping.
very good. So we're not just taking a chance on a guy, which until a guy proves he can head coach, you don't know. But you've got a name that's been around for 2 or 3 seasons pretty consistently. The body of work is pretty good in more than one place. And you've got some pretty strong connections between this coaching staff group, not just rando guys, but guys that we like too. We like them individually. They happen to have the connections. In Arizona, I would be very happy to give them a shot here.
Um, the Bills could then hire either Mike Kafka or Drew Petzing even to be their offensive
Right.
coordinator to replace Brady. And I didn't do this with the Rams when I stole Chris Shula and Mike LaFleur from the Rams and we stuck them in Miami. The Rams, I had elevating Aubrey Pleasant to DC. He's their defensive
Mm,
back coach, assistant head coach. He was the one that Chula would take with him to be
okay.
defensive coordinator, but the Rams aren't going to let him go. They're going to say, well, if Shula's going, you can just be defensive coordinator,
Okay.
similar to Shula when Morris left. And
Yeah.
with Raheem Morris being fired and going off to work with Shula, how about Zach Robinson comes back to the Rams to be the OC
Okay.
again?
That worked before. Yes. So,
And then you're not doing Alex Van Pelt because that would have been the next guy I kind of touted. But if Robinson's fired, let's just bring him
right.
back, let him do it. Maybe we give Van Pelt like quarterback coach or something like that, pass
Yeah.
game
See, I'm fine
coordinator.
with that. And it's interesting how I like different guys in different spots. Van Pelt as QB coach, I'm totally fine with, you
People
know?
have their play. I mean, we see this with especially coordinators all
Right.
the time that try to become head coaches. Sometimes you're a coordinator and you could be an
Sometimes you are.
awesome coordinator and that's a way better job for you. So,
And you
anyways,
might,
that's go ahead.
yeah, that's all. That's 4 of the 5 jobs. You might be better at OC or DC than some of the head coaches would be at OC or DC. We filled out 4 of the 5 jobs. I haven't filled out the Giants job yet, so I'm hoping this last staff
All right, you
fits.
will
If
like this one.
not, we're gonna have to shuffle some people around.
No, you're gonna like this one. Green Bay Packers defensive coordinator Jeff Hafley
Okay.
comes in from the college game, just like Mike McDonald, just like um, who's the other one that did it? Well, Jesse Minter coming from the college game as well. Just another college DC coming in and having success with installing their kind of defense in this,
Yes,
right?
he did.
And of course,
Yeah.
both those guys come from Michigan, so but Hafley comes in from Boston College and is immediately successful. With Green Bay, we saw last year when they didn't have the talent, they papered over it with sim pressures and different types of blitzes and interceptions and different coverages, different disguises, creating turnovers, creating havoc. They give Micah Parsons this year played a little more straight up. They're still doing well, getting production. Now they're mixing up a little bit in the second half of the season. They're moving Micah Parsons around more. They're having him drop out a little bit more. This guy's just creative. He's getting the job done. He's hardcore. Um, he knew what some a couple key staff changes to make this year. They grabbed the I'm gonna forget his name, Covington, I think, the defensive line coach from the Patriots, who became their DC under Mayo. They brought him in. They changed that defensive line scheme a little bit and what they were doing, and he's done well. So Jeff Hafley is going to be a head coach in this scenario. We have him going to, what did you just say, New York, right?
Yes, that's the last opening.
Up up there, New York, Massachusetts, like this, and this guy's coached for a long time. He's coached in the NFL. He's coached in college. Let me tell you about the staff. What if I told you, Ben, that Jeff Hafley was a defensive backs coach with the Cleveland Browns in 2014 and 2015, and then he was a defensive back coach with the San Francisco 49ers from 2017 to 2018. Do you know what offensive minded person was also in those two teams in those 2 years or in those two stints?
I don't actually.
I'll
So,
give you a hint.
okay.
We fired him from his head coaching job tonight. Mike McDaniel worked with Jeff Hafley in Cleveland and San Francisco for 3 seasons
Wow.
across a, I don't know, 5, 6 year span. Everyone's going to want Mike McDaniel to be head coach. Nobody's going to admit it, but everyone wants him fired because they want him to be their offensive coordinator next year.
Right. Right.
So Hafley is going to reach back to his roots. He's going to call up old buddy Mike McDaniel and say, "Come be my offensive coordinator in New York." Defensively, actually, let's sit with that. Tell me what you think about Mike McDaniel as OC for Jeff
Okay.
Hafley.
Mike McDaniel is OC. I absolutely totally love anywhere. Anywhere. Yes. Okay. Um, I really like Jeff Hafley. For me, it's for some of these guys, it is early. That's where we're at right now in the NFL, right? It's a little early. I like him. I watched him in Boston College. I liked his work there. I I was a little skeptical about how fast he could make do the Green Bay thing. It's been fine. It's been more than fine. So I have no problem with it. I didn't love it in New York as HC as quick as some of these other fits, but I'm totally fine with it, especially knowing that I can get McDaniel as OC because they're linked. They've got not one link but two. That's very
Yep.
good. I really like that.
You've got to get that defense going. You've got to get that defensive
Yeah,
line going with all those
yeah.
investments. I think Hafley's a great pick for that. Ironically, Xavier McKinney was a Giant, came to Green Bay the same year as Hafley. But, they're trying to do some stuff with Javon Holland and that group. So there's some guys in the secondary that are interesting. As his defensive coordinator, I'm just having him grab a couple guys that came with him to Green Bay from Boston College.
Okay.
So linebackers coach, is it Sean Duggan? Yeah, Sean Duggan was with Hafley from 2019 all the way till now. So the last 6 years. 2 years in Green Bay, 3 years in Boston College, and then 1 year at Ohio State. They actually were both at Ohio State in 2019 as well. Um, but here's another fun one. Vince Ogabasi. He is Green Bay's defensive line coach right now. I think focused more on like the interior of the defensive line. He was also with him at Boston College for those 3 years. Uh, Ogabasi spent time at Ohio State as well before Hafley did, but still same tree, bloodline, all that sort of stuff. He was also on that San Francisco staff in 2017 and
Was it
2018. He was the
really?
defensive line coach then under Sala.
Wow.
So that's some deep roots right there. So he could go with the guy that's a little bit older and experienced and has coached in the NFL a little bit longer and Ogabasi, or you go with the slightly younger guy and Sean Duggan. But maybe both those guys come with him. Maybe both those guys, and
Yeah.
you make one your DC, but you make one your defensive run game coordinator, right, or whatever kind of title you give him to leave. Um, I think you'd be able to bring his staff pretty easily, and then for you Packers fans out there, I could stick Mac Burke here instead, who under D'Amico Ryans and s- been a DC several different places. I can bring him in to be the DC for the Packers moving forward. But I got Hafley having his connections to different guys. And that's the thing, when you're a coach coming from college, you don't always have those connections, right? You don't always
Right.
have that built in. But
Right.
Halfley, having been a coach for so long and spent time in the NFL a decade ago before he went to college and he went back and forth, he has connections, right? So, and it was just so funny that when I was going back through his history and I was just doing this in the 15 minutes between videos, it's like, oh, 49ers those years. That's interesting. Mike McDaniel. Oh, and Cleveland. Oh, it made too much sense. So Halfley, Mike McDaniel, and then he brings his two Boston College guys with him to coach up the defense.
I like this. Um, again, it feels like again, you don't know until you see him as head coach with Halfley. And I've seen him as head coach with Boston College, but that's college, that's not NFL. But I'm okay with it. Halfley seems like he's got a pretty good head on his shoulders and he wouldn't do weird stuff as a head coach, is what it feels like, you know? And I think that's a good fit with McDaniel, who probably doesn't need to be head coach more than likely, but as OC, you're right. Everybody would want him. This feels like a staff that could go to New York and hold up and not, I mean, hold up under pressure. I'm not saying hold up under wins and losses, but they could hold up under that pressure. And then it feels like a staff that would help out this offense and it would help out this defense. So I'm all in favor of it. I don't feel like there's as many outstanding, really enviable names like we had last year
Right.
because I felt like we had two or three last year. But I really like the staffs you've put together here. All of these appeal to me. There's not one staff here that I wouldn't want to take a chance on. And I mean, not one. They're all five good quality staffs. I found a place for all five of them that I'm happy with. I'm happy to try to move forward with this. So that's very good. I really like that. That's excellent work. And the deep dives there, the connections and the deep dives on these guys, that's some excellent quality work there. Really good.
Thanks, man. Catnip. You want to talk GMs? What GMs we firing tonight?
New Orleans Saints, baby. All right, look, you knew I was going to go here. I had to go here. The Saints aren't awful, they aren't dreadful, they aren't hopeless, but they're also not good. They're not consistent. They don't have a direction. They don't have an identity. They don't run their finances very well for a team that has no better results than what they have. If you're going to run crazy finances, you got to have some great results. They don't have that, you know. So, yeah, let's clean house in this Saints. You can even keep Kellen Moore as head coach if you want to. I'm fine with that. I'm not thrilled with it, but I'm okay with it. Let's give him another year. But let's clean out. Man, this is long overdue. Let's clean out this entire Saints front office. Do you have anybody else I can put in there?
And ironically, the funny thing is, like, they wouldn't even have to clean it out because it's only five people and four, like, don't really watch sports. And this is unfortunately how infrequently compared to what we used to do together, Ben, in terms of podcasting twice a week
Hmm.
together, essentially. What's the GM's name with the Saints right now? What's that guy? Who's
Well,
the mobster?
yeah. So there's Ireland is there, and
Uh-huh.
then he's still influencing the room. And
Yeah.
I got rid of the other
Whatever.
guy's name. I can't even
Whatever.
pull it out.
Whoever
Yeah,
he is,
yeah.
he's still gonna be there. That's the awkward thing because he's also in charge of the Pelicans, which is also a flailing organization. So who's essentially, let's just say
Yeah.
the Saints have hired you and I as an outside hiring firm, and they're like, we have heard a primarily football general manager is helpful. Who would you guys
Loomis,
recommend?
Mickey Loomis. That's the other. I
Thank you.
If you hadn't asked me live on air, I could have told you. But yeah, Loomis, Ireland, they all need to get out of this front office.
Here's the name for you. I have a clear number one person, and it's
Okay.
Ray Agnew. He's the
Yes.
assistant GM with the Detroit Lions. This is
Yes.
his fifth year with the Lions.
Yep.
He comes from the Rams. He was a scout
Yep.
with the Rams all those years because he came over with and now I'm blanking on the Lions' current general manager. But he came over to be a part of his staff. And Dan Campbell ties, right? Dan Campbell comes from New Orleans, right? And so if we're gonna still be mobster family first scenario, but we'll hire a GM, all right, let's call Dan, right? Let's call Dan and see what he thinks of this guy, and then he's gonna speak the world of him. Ray Agnew is the defensive is the GM that you want for New Orleans.
I almost don't care. All right. I just want to clean house. Even if he's only in there for 3 seasons, and then I'll let him go. But Agnew's fine. All right. he's actually not one of the top names I
Brad
thought you were going to
Holmes.
trot
Brad
out.
Holmes for the Lions. That's who I was thinking about.
I love Brad Holmes. Holmes done so good, but
The thing with the GM stuff is interesting. I'd be interested to hear like some of the names that you're thinking about, but the GM part is hard because guys from all over the personnel department get interviewed for GM spots, right? You've
they
got
do.
assistant GMs, you got vice
Yeah,
presidents of this, you've got directors of personnel scout, player or pro personnel scouting, you got directors of college scouting, you've got you hardly ever just get true scouts, but and then you've got guys in the media who used to be GMs or wanted to be GMs or talk to GMs now, so they're in the GM circle. There's such a wide net, but ultimately when I look up the teams that I think are best representative of like who you want to pluck the tree from, just like you do with coaching staffs. You know, you go to the good teams, you look at the AGM, and you're like, well, this person was a scout or an analyst for a good team. Maybe it was the same team, but for a good team. And then they became an area scout for a good team, and then became director of scouting for a good team, and then they became director, vice president of football operations, which just means they oversee both scouting departments. And then they're the assistant general manager, which means not only do they oversee all the scouts, but they're actually working with the general manager to make the contracts and like negotiate and communicate with the other team. So going the straight AGM route is funny because it's the least fancy title that you can find on a organizational header, right, on the website, but it's the one that encompasses the things that you want from the job the most. Did you have a name specifically that you were looking at?
Uh, there's a couple of names I've been looking at for about 3 years now. Ian Cunningham from the Bears is one of those names. Ed Dodds from the Colts is another one of those names.
Cunningham,
Um,
I had on a long list. Cunningham, I had on a long list.
Obviously,
Um,
he's not leaving, but Willie McClay out of Dallas would be a name I
oh
would
yeah, oh, for
make a
sure,
hard run at.
for sure.
So
Yeah,
those are three names right there, and there are others, but those are three. The top guy on the list for a while was the guy that went to the
Peters.
Commanders,
Hmm.
Peters. Yeah, so he's obviously out. Those are some of the names. Well, let's
I
get
do
back to
have
your name.
I do have Andy Weidel, assistant GM
Yes,
for the Steelers.
right, right.
Long time scout, has connections to the Ravens, spent a lot of time with the Eagles, but he's that, scout, director of scouting, now officially the AGM. Um, and the Steelers, for everything that I complained about what's happening on the field, the way they're running the drafts of late, and I think some of the not really the pro personnel stuff, but Weidel's more of a scout, a college kind of guy. He sets the board as well for the Steelers. That's a little inside baseball that I just know about my own team. So he's one. This is his fourth year as the assistant general manager, and then here's a name for you, Alec Hollaby from
Yes,
the Eagles. Fourth year
yes,
as their assistant general manager. He's been
right.
there for like 17 years, I think.
Mhm.
Started at the ground level under Howie Roseman.
Right.
Harvard grad, like analytics analyst, hardcore, but got into like player evaluations really early on. Um, so that's a guy with experience, good organization, worked under a great GM for a really long time. That's kind of another young guy that I'd be looking at with experience. So Agnew, Weidel, and Hallaby were my like top three. So for me, I wasn't considering the Saints, but in terms of the jobs that I would expect to be open. Even if Stefanski stays, I think the Browns and Andrew Berry should part ways. The Dolphins obviously have a GM opening with Chris Greer, and then the
Yes,
Falcons, Terry Fontenot, like that should be gone. If you look at the head coaches that we have fired over there, the Titans aren't going to move on from their guy Borgonzi yet. We know Joe Shane is staying with the Giants,
right.
and we are pretty confident Monty Ossenfort's going to stay with Arizona. So I was really only working with those two openings. And let's say you even tell me that Andrew Berry stays with Cleveland, which I don't think he should, but let's say he did. If we wanted to just say New Orleans in this fun scenario where they actually hire a football guy to be GM, those would be the three names, right? Agnew goes, let's say, to New Orleans. Weidel goes to, let's say, trying to decide if I have a feeling one way or another, Miami, and then let's say Halby goes to um, Atlanta or something like that.
Yeah. And listen, all the names you've put out there are would be in my top 10 to 12, plus the names that I mentioned as well. The GM job is harder to identify a legit candidate. It's real easy to look at titles and experience and say, well, this guy's resume works. That does not mean he's going to be a good GM. We really have no clue what he's really done. We know the staffs he's been a part of. We don't know what he's really done. He may have even been responsible for some good drafts, but that doesn't mean he made the final decisions or that he was pushing for those particular guys that panned out.
Right. Mm-hmm.
It's so hard to know. He may be good at contracts, but suck at the draft.
Mm-hmm.
It's so hard to look at what work did he do?
Yep.
What was he successful at? It's really hard. And on top of that, it's even harder in some cases to identify a bad general manager because you can be a bad general manager and still hit on some draft picks, still have a pretty good head coach that's covering your butt,
There's already a good quarterback. Mm-hmm.
already have a good quarterback that's winning enough games to keep you out of hot water. You can always fire the head coach and buy yourself another 2 or 3 seasons.
Right.
It's hard. It's very difficult. I have less opinions about who would be good
Yeah.
as a GM candidate. Going back to Agnew in the Saints, I'm totally fine with it. That's one of the names. I just want to get that group out of there, put somebody else in so that we actually have some pure NFL football super winning thoughts in our heads.
Right.
That's really what we need to get back to for the Saints.
And then some young names, some people that I like their resume and like their background, but just like it would be too early. Nolan Teasley is the AGM for the Seahawks. It's his second year in that role, so it's basically like
Okay.
um, John Schneider. Like when Pete Carroll gets pushed out, he was looking for his own number two, and Teasley was a guy that was with Seattle for a while, and he gets the promotion. So like be on the lookout for him for in a couple of years. And then all these three guys are first time AGMs. They're long time. They went from scouts or analysts into directors of something, and they're AGMs for the first time this year. Rob McCartney with the Bucks, John McKay with the Rams, and RJ Gillen with the 49ers. RJ Gillen actually, speaking of Adam Peters, who was a basketball player at UCLA, goes to
Mm,
Washington, where his basketball background of all those guys. RJ Gillen he was in some NBA front office, might have even been the Spurs or something like that before he joined the 49ers. So just like that basketball connection continues through the 49ers, I guess, for some reason. But those are four names of young guys that need a couple more years being AGM, I think, before they're really in consideration for these sorts of things. Um, but names to keep an eye out for.
I I tell you, I would probably lean more heavily on reputation and interview for a GM job than I would head coaching spots. With head coaches, even if they haven't head coached before, you can see what they did as
Hmm.
OC or DC, and you
Hmm.
pretty much know that's largely his work. You can't do that with GM candidates.
Yep.
Matter of fact, I'm convinced there have been throughout history some guys who would have been great at GMs that never got a shot at it.
Hmm.
Not only are there only 32 GM jobs at the NFL level, they get longer, so you don't run through as many candidates,
Yep.
So it's 2 to 3 times, less than what you would get the HC jobs. I would really want a guy. Listen, some of these owners are just stupid. I don't need a guy I can drink with or golf with or chat it up with. What has that got to do with winning a football game or putting together a Super Bowl team? It's just ridiculous. Give me a guy who's smart, hardworking, can put together good staff, and then can sit down and make decisions. You know, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for a real smart guy. He doesn't have to be Yale or Harvard smart, but he's got to be football smart. That's what you're looking for. So, it's not easy to identify that. All right, what else you got for us, Simon?
I think that's about it, man. I think that's about it. Those three GMs, those staffs, and we'll update this. I think you talked about like try to find time in January when we know who's officially getting fired. Because listen, there's a whole Kevin Stefanski staff that I had put together. There's a Mike Tomlin staff I put together. Honestly, in case Tomlin was going to become available, I actually initially had Tomlin with Dayball and Raheem Morris. because I knew that would really get you going. Um, but since
Yes,
we didn't fire Tomlin, nor necessarily should we. Um,
right.
I didn't get to put that together, but yeah, we'll update these and we'll see where the connections are with the guys that are getting interviewed, and so we'll know who some coordinator names are to pay attention to. And yeah, man, it'll be fun. But I appreciate you having me on.
If you're in the audience, we have a very set schedule about how we're going to go about this. So Black Monday comes around once a year for all the NFL coaches, right? We're not eager at this network to be the first to jump in and have an opinion. So we'll wait till either the Tuesday right after Black Monday or the Thursday right after Black Monday, probably the Thursday. And we'll have a little bit of time to get as many names that got fired because usually there's one straggler, right?
Hmm.
Try to have as many names that got fired as possible and have some real good solid takes, not the first take, but some real good quality takes because that's what we do around here. We're adults, we're not kids. We're going to have some good solid takes on the guys that got fired and the guys that survived. And at that point in time, we'll have a little bit more recommendations. Although we're not going to go much deeper than what Simon already did tonight. That depth is hard to beat. That's really good depth. But we will know for sure which jobs are pretty much open. We'll cover this again at that time. And then as we get over into mid-January and late, early February, we'll cover again the hirings as well. So that's the outlay. Simon, it's been fantastic. You and I have recorded for about 4 hours tonight. That's 4 different hours of content that you and the audience get. Again, these are adult takes. They're not kid takes. They're not hot takes. Okay. Excellent work, Simon. I really, really appreciate it. That's outstanding work on all of this. So thank you.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. A lot of fun. Thank you all so much for watching.
Everybody, this is Pro Football Enterprises. I'm Ben Parker. That's Simon Short. Thanks again to Shane Ratliff for his work on the other episodes as well. Y'all have a great one. We'll see you. Good night.